So today we're going to talk about the 5 most toxic things a narcissistic parent does and why so many of us are still trying to make them proud years after we stop living with them. We're going to talk about coming out of denial and looking at what really happened. And this is not to blame anybody, but so you can stop living by rules someone else made up for you, so you can stop living from the conditioning that is controlling you. If you were raised by a parent like that, you have probably spent years making excuses for them. You've said that they did their best. You've put the phone down feeling small and never knowing why. You've had good news and told them last, or you didn't tell them at all. Because the worst thing a narcissistic parent does never looks like abuse. They look like rules. They look like norms. Rules about what you're allowed to need, rules about what you're allowed to feel, and rules about what you're allowed to have. So stay with me to number 5. That's the one you're probably still paying for. Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa A. Romano, the Breakthrough Life Coach. And for over 20 years, I've helped thousands of adult children of dysfunction learn to self-heal from codependency and break free from narcissistic abuse. I help them reprogram at the subconscious level. So let's start with number 1, rationed love. It was not that there was nothing. There was something, just never enough, and almost never when you needed it. I remember coming home from school with a blue ribbon from an art contest when I was about 7 or 8 years old. I was proudly holding it there in the kitchen, only to get a cold, indifferent nod and feeling instantly deflated by my mom. I tried so hard to please her, to make her proud of me, but no matter what I achieved, it was never enough to gain that validation or that connection that a child needs with her mom. Yet often, when we were in front of my female cousins, for example, she would suddenly transform into this glowing mother figure, showering them with praise. Well, I stood there. I was just invisible, and it confused me. Years later, when I invited her to help me pick out my wedding dress, a moment every daughter dreams of sharing with her mom, she showed absolutely no emotion. It was like pulling teeth to get her to even come. And when we were there, when I tried on a dress, she looked like she was annoyed. But at the same time, I knew that she was a mom who had fed me, kept a roof over our heads, and put us through private school. So this left me feeling very confused because needing the kind of love that she so freely gave to others felt like a trap. And it made me feel that maybe there was something wrong with me. And that is why she treated me differently. And that is why she could not love me like she loved others, especially other little girls my age, like my cousins. It also left me feeling incredibly selfish and confused because I could see how kind she was to others. That is the essence of rationed love. It's not that there was nothing. There was something, just never enough, and almost never when I needed it. Now, from a neuropsychological perspective, this unpredictable environment subjects a child to intermittent reinforcement, which spikes dopamine levels in anticipation of a reward that rarely comes. This unpredictability keeps your nervous system trapped in a state of hypervigilance, conditioning your brain to continuously seek safety, approval, and connection from an inconsistent source. That's why you feel trapped. What I understand now, what I truly get today, is that my mom's emotional withholding was never a reflection of my innate worthiness. Instead, it was a reflection of her capacity. An emotionally impoverished parent can only give from the shallow well they possess, and keeping you hungry keeps you compliant and also focused on them. Today, this pattern shows up when you settle for breadcrumbs in a relationship, or you settle for breadcrumbs of reassurance, or you exhaust yourself in adult relationships, mistaking the anxiety of earning affection for true connection. It's codependency. If you are navigating this healing journey and you're going through this, I want you to try to remember this when you're in the throes of it. Think of this mantra: I do not have to starve at someone else's table waiting for permission to feel worthy. I'm allowed to step away and feed my own soul. This is you breaking free. If part of you is thinking, but I was fine, I never needed much anyway, I want you to hear me. Sometimes, dear one, that is not strength. That is what rationed love teaches a child to think at the subconscious level, and it has a name. And it most always manifests as some form of codependency, some form of fawning, needing validation, and feeling stuck. Over 50,000 people have taken my free codependency quiz to see whether codependency and what they went through in childhood is quietly hurting their relationships with self and others and keeping them from living a fulfilled, empowered, autonomous life. So you can take the quiz. The link is in the description box below. Number 2. Emotional theft. You brought home a feeling, you brought it into a room, and they took it away from you. You walked in carrying something completely of your own, and you walked out carrying something that belonged to them. Think of it like an emotional game of musical chairs with rigged rules. The moment you enter the room holding a feeling of your own, the music stops. Your parent steals your chair. And suddenly you are left standing, scrambling to hold up the massive weight of what they're supposed to take care of what is theirs. I see this all the time with my clients. I remember my client Stephanie, who was struggling with love addiction and codependency, recalling the day she found out that she had received a full ride scholarship to college. She ran home overflowing with pride and excitement and eager to share her accomplishment. But within 5 minutes of telling her mom, the entire climate shifted. Her mother broke down, talking about how much she had sacrificed over the years just to keep a roof over their heads, and complaining that Jessica was just going to abandon her. Now that she was moving on to bigger things, she would have no one there to be with her and take care of her. And Jessica walked into that room carrying pure joy. And she walked out carrying overwhelming guilt, feeling as if her success was a personal attack on her mother. That is emotional theft. From a neuropsychological standpoint, this dynamic triggers projective identification and forced co-regulation in reverse. A child's brain naturally relies on the parent to regulate their emotional state. But when a narcissistic parent feels threatened by your independent joy or distress, their nervous system dysregulates and unconsciously dumps their emotional burden onto you. To maintain safety and connection, your brain's mirror neurons instinctively adapt to their distress, forcing you to suppress your own internal state and soothe theirs instead. What happened in that house was that a child's emotional life was treated as an inconvenience or a direct threat. Your feelings were hijacked so quickly that you learned to abandon your emotional truth just to keep the peace. What I get now and how I found my own feelings again in situations like this is the realization that another adult's emotional ups and downs were never my responsibility to fix. They were never Stephanie's either. Reclaiming yourself starts when you stop absorbing your parents' ups and downs and you allow yourself to sit in the truth of your own experience. So this is where detachment is key. Noticing what they did, how they hijacked and stole your emotional thunder versus internalizing what they did is key. They just stole my emotional moment. And that distinction is gold. And if you are healing from this today, keep this reminder close to your heart. I want you to repeat this to yourself when you sense this is going on. I'm allowed to carry my own joy without apologizing for someone else's inability to create or experience their own, and without needing them to share in my joy. If you practice that one, it'll help you be set free. Number 3, punish joy. They cannot let you be happy in front of them. The good thing always had to be made smaller. Imagine holding a brightly lit candle in a cold, dark room. Instead of being warmed by the light, your parent feels exposed and threatened by it. So they immediately blow it out to bring the room back down to their level of their shadow. I see this often in my coaching practice with clients who struggle to celebrate even their own success. I remember my client Sarah recalling the day she got promoted to the head of her department at work. She rushed to tell her mom, hoping for a moment of shared pride. Her mother took one look at her and said, "Well, don't get ahead of yourself. That just means twice as much stress, longer hours, and more taxes. You'll probably end up burnt out in 6 months." In less than 30 seconds, Sarah's excitement was completely extinguished. The win was flattened, and she walked away feeling foolish for having felt happy in the first place. That is punished joy. Now, from a neuropsychological perspective, this actually conditions a child's nervous system through adverse conditioning and dopamine suppression. When an outburst of genuine joy or excitement is consistently met with contempt, criticism, or coldness, your brain begins to link positive emotional states with impending threat. There's actually that link there. So now, below the veil of consciousness, your nervous system learns to trigger a survival response, releasing stress hormones like cortisol the moment you feel happy because your nervous system feels threatened by it. In essence, your brain learns to fear joy because joy always precedes punishment. So what happened in that house was that a parent's envy and deep-seated sense of inadequacy could not tolerate your light or your joy. They had to flatten your win because your happiness highlighted their internal emptiness. It's like turning on a light in the kitchen and noticing the black spots on the wall. You turn off the light and the black spots disappear. So what I get now and what Sarah gets now and what I do with Good News Today and what Sarah does with Good News Today is that we guard our joy fiercely. I no longer cast my pearls before people who lack the capacity to celebrate them. I share my wins with safe, grounded people who expand my light, who don't feel threatened by my light, rather than extinguish that light. And I let myself tell the truth about the people in my life that actually try to wear me down or tear me down. I don't pretend that the people who try to dim my light don't. That's me healing codependency by learning to trust my instincts one experience at a time. It's not easy. It is mental work, but it's worth it. And if you are healing from this today, practice this truth, like make it a part of your inner mantra. I no longer need to pretend bubble poppers don't exist. I know them when I see them. I know them when I feel them. And I'm allowed to experience my own wins without needing to share them. This is me breaking the pattern of needing other people's approval. Number 4, borrowed hope. They kept you waiting for a version of them that was never going to show up. Think of it like holding an expired rain check in a desert. Every time you were ready to walk away, they would offer you a tiny glimmer of change, a brief apology, a rare moment of tenderness, or a grand promise, just enough to persuade you to stay and invest in a future that was never actually going to be delivered. This is another pattern that I see so often in my coaching clients who spend years trapped in endless cycles of waiting, just waiting. I remember my client Jessica recalling how her mother used to promise her over and over, "Once I stop drinking, I'm finally going to break up with him. Things are going to change. I promise. Our life will get better. We'll find another apartment and everything will absolutely transform." Jessica anchored her entire adolescent world around that one promise, holding her breath and believing that if she just stayed patient, if she just kept the peace, and if she just took care of her mother, the real loving parent would finally emerge and she would take care of Jessica. But the day Jessica turned 18, she packed her bags to move out, looking back at her mother, still trapped in the exact same cycle. Now, Jessica walked out of that house completely heartbroken, but she also left with a profound, undeniable clarity that her mother was never going to change. The drinking never stopped, and she never broke off that relationship. That's borrowed hope. Now, from a neuropsychological perspective, this cycle triggers reward prediction error and keeps the brain trapped in this dopamine type anticipation. Now, when a parent alternates between emotional neglect, between addiction and sudden hopeful promises, A child's brain releases a surge of dopamine, not when you actually receive the safety or love, but when you anticipate it. This creates a state of chronic hypervigilance, sort of like promising the puppy a treat. This creates a state of chronic hypervigilance, conditioning your nervous system to stay hooked on the potential of what could be, on the promise, on your imagination for the future, rather than accepting the reality of what actually is. What happened in that house was that a child's natural longing for safety was actually weaponized to keep her compliant. So if this is you, you were given just enough false hope to prevent you from establishing boundaries or emotionally detaching so you could take care of yourself and make conscious decisions. Jessica's adult life became a cycle of chronic people-pleasing and emotional caretakeship. She stayed in toxic dynamics and sacrificed her sanity to fix broken partners. And it was until she watched herself waiting on another empty promise and she had this aha moment that she realized that chasing someone else's potential was slowly destroying her real life. And what Jessica gets now is that her loyalty was never meant to be a ransom paid for someone else's healing. And that stepping away from a toxic pattern isn't abandoning them. It is finally choosing yourself. Jessica finally chose herself. So if you're healing from this type of a wound today, anchor yourself in this very affirming truth. I no longer hold space for the potential of who someone could be at the expense of who they consistently show me and tell me and behave as they are. I'm enough. And when I do not choose the self, that's me abandoning me. See, that's the accountability piece. And I'm just not willing to run that pattern any longer. Number 5, the invisible debt. Everything they ever gave you, you were quietly billed for, you just didn't know it. And this might be the cruelest of the 5, so that's why I put it last. Imagine receiving what looks like a gift wrapped up with a beautiful bow, only to find an itemized invoice stuck inside that box years later. Basic acts of shelter, food, and care were not given out of unconditional love. They were investments, and they were made with the expectation of lifetime compliance and emotional repayment. I see this a lot, and I also saw this in my own life. I see this with so many of my clients who carry a crushing silent guilt. So take my client, Michelle, for example. She grew up hearing her mother constantly say things like, I gave up my youth for you. I sacrificed my career. I sacrificed my body and my entire life just to make sure that you had a roof over your head. And this is how you treat me? Just for Michelle saying no. So for years, Michelle believed her very existence was a burden her mother had to endure, and she felt guilty about that. Whenever Michelle tried to set a simple boundary or say no to an unreasonable demand, her mother would pull out the ledger. She'd say something like, after everything I did for you. And Michelle realized the depth of this pattern when she saw her husband weaponize the exact same emotional leverage. He'd say things like, you can't say no, look how you live. And then what really got her is when she saw the pattern reveal in her daughter, and she heard her own daughter demand that Michelle retire from her nursing career to provide free full-time childcare to her new granddaughter, rationalizing, this is what her daughter said, I was a good daughter, I did well in school, and I gave you no trouble, so you owe this to me. Facing that undeniable mirror was the exact catalyst that drove Michelle to commit to reprogramming her subconscious mind. She had to get to the root of those patterns. And using the right tools, she broke the generational cycle. She stopped abandoning herself. And she completely transformed her relationship with herself, her inner narrative, and with the people in her life. Michelle's turning point came when she realized that her family was billing her for standard relationship issues like standard parental obligations and natural life choices things the child never asked for and could never owe repayment on. Now, Michelle finally stopped paying bills she should have never have been billed for. Like, this is crazy, but she could finally see it. That is the invisible debt. Now, from a neuropsychological perspective, you're not crazy if you struggle with this. This dynamic exploits existential guilt and coerced reciprocal altruism. Human brains, they're hardwired for reciprocity to maintain social bonds with other people. So when a parent frames a basic caregiving as a grand sacrificial debt, it triggers chronic threat responses in the child's amygdala. The child's brain interprets setting a boundary or living autonomously or independently as a dangerous violation of social safety, which drives an unconscious habit of compliance just to quiet the unbearable feeling of guilt. And we have to be fair in our analysis here, because a single stress comment from a tired parent does not create this level of issue. For these dynamics to leave deep psychological scars, they must be pervasive. These have to be continuous patterns, and there must be a relentless baseline where emotional care is consistently conditional and also weaponized over time. And that is what Michelle experienced. Now, what Michelle gets now, and what you need to understand today if you're going through this, is that basic caretaking is a parent's legal and moral duty, not a personal loan. You do not owe your autonomy, your life, or your mental peace as interest on a debt you never agreed to incur. If you are healing from this today, try to remember this truth. Really let it sear into your heart, because many of us carry this feeling like we're a burden. My existence was never a debt to be repaid, and I'm allowed to tear up the ledger, even if others don't think so. And I'm allowed to live my life freely. I give others permission to have their faulty perception of what they think I owe them. This releases me. I really hope that that really sticks in your heart. So rational love, emotional theft, punished joy, and borrowed hope, the invisible debt. Read that list again, dear one. Not one of those was something that you did. You didn't do anything wrong. You were just a child walking into a house every day, working out how to simply get through it. That is all any of this was. And it worked. That's the heartbreaking part. It worked so well that your nervous system is still running those exact same codes today, because you were brainwashed between the ages of 0 and 7. Now you're allowed to stop that now. Not today and not all at once, but you're allowed to begin this healing journey. And remember, nobody breaks these generational cycles on their own. It's very rare. If this resonates with you, I want to invite you to join the 12-week Breakthrough Coaching Program. I specifically created this for adult children of alcoholics and adult children of narcissistic parents, those who grew up feeling emotionally neglected, who grew up feeling invisible, unseen, and unheard, and who can recognize these patterns of running their life at the subconscious level. Now, through the Above the Veil method, I will teach you how to change the survival codes that you were raised on, the exact rules we just named, so you can reparent yourself, you can rewrite the subconscious programming, and you can become the true authority of your own life. So exciting. There is a roadmap. Over 5,000 adult children across my courses and my community are learning to self-heal and reprogram at the subconscious level. You can break these patterns, dear one. You really can. If you want to learn more, the link is in the description box below. Click it, and you can start week 1 today. Bye for now.